Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is March 27th, 2026, and this is episode 690, which, fast math, means we're going to hit episode 700 2 weeks from today. So make sure you come back. I don't think we have any special plans for that yet, Andy, but we always try to do something fun on the hundreds, I think, at this point. 700 is quite a goal. Every 100 that we hit, I think, is pretty impressive.
I know. Let's publish Project Bruno and give people access to 700. Okay.
No, yeah, 100%. That's what needs to happen. If I can stop getting distracted by every squirrel that runs by me, we have a few of those today that we want to talk about, especially one or two of them. So Andy and I, thank you to everybody that's coming into the comments. And what we're going to do is get into some quick news here, and then hopefully jump into some things I've been working on. I want to share really quick, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So Andy, you had a big one. I think you said it was called TurboQuant. What was it called?
Google Research published a paper called TurboQuant that is like a hand grenade into a room of developers of AI. At every level of the development stack, including the inference chip stack that has to be created here for hundreds of trillions of dollars over the next week. So Google developed a quantization algorithm. Okay, so this is just math that shrinks AI models KV cache. That's the key value cache. It's technical term for the way that a model remembers things in its inference run. Okay, it's the memory that stores the conversation context. So while you're in the dialogue and it's maintaining that context, the KV cache is that part of it that's holding that. So they were able, with this quantization algorithm, to shrink it 6x, so 1/6 the size, without retraining the model in any way, and with zero measurable accuracy loss. It has no impact on the quality of the inference. Doesn't make it better. It just makes it faster and cheaper. So it delivers not just 6x reduction in size, but when you run an inference pass, it's 8 times faster. And the test harness for that was NVIDIA H100s, which are really the main GPU that's out there that's running all these inference things. There's later ones, GB200 and so on, that are in sort of specialized data centers, but now over time may or may not need to replace the H100s that are out there running. Okay. Memory stocks like Micron that build the memory that is associated with the passage on a GPU stack back and forth between memory and the actual GPU to shuttle data back and forth in all of these various calculations that happen, they dropped by 3 to 5% on the official release. So you can see that there are people watching this and seeing, Google just changed the math of how AI inference is done. Okay, so what does it do? It compresses KV cache memory down to 3.5 bits per channel. Okay, and what Google used as the term for what this does, it says absolute quality neutrality. Okay, it does this in efficiency improvement with zero measurable accuracy loss. Okay, and there's 2 sub techniques in this thing. One's called polar quant, which converts Cartesian vectors that are used in this complex quadratic math calculation to polar coordinates, eliminating some normalization overhead. And a second part of this algorithmic approach is QJL, which is a training and optimization method. Okay, but it doesn't require any new kind of training or fine tuning on a model. You just change your math algorithm to this thing, and that accelerates everything at no loss. Okay, so the trajectory is clear. While we're worried about the enormous investment that has to be made for high-level GPU data centers, smarter software is coming along
Yeah.
It's systematically eroding the hardware premium that's been underpinning AI all the way to this date. So this has impact on infrastructure investment costs because you will not need to, buy GB 200s. You can use H100s and get
Mm.
the same kind of acceleration, not exactly the same. There's other advantages to the NVIDIA Vera Rubin stack that
Yeah.
is complicated beyond just the algorithm that is running the thing. Okay, so anyway, there's a larger pattern of software here that is creating efficiency gains, undermining this idea that we need infinite compute. And the people who are spending, hundreds of billions of dollars to build out data centers, we may not need that much demand for data center because you can run more inference on the same data center that you've got by changing your software. So
Yeah. And like so the question I have with this is, Andy, there are some major improvements here coming from software as you just put out there. But it makes me think of what Sam Altman said is like, oh, like the idea that this means that we can slow down on, data centers. Matt Wolf just had a whole video about that yesterday, talking about what Bernie Sanders and some other folks were suggesting about a moratorium on building more
yeah.
data centers. But my thing is that this does not slow down the need for data centers at all. This just improves the software, which increases the demand, which puts us right back where we
And
are.
reduces exactly, and that's called Jevons paradox, which is,
Okay.
when, Jevons paradox is when you reduce the cost, it doesn't reduce the demand,
Right.
it increases the demand.
Exponentially.
Right.
Right.
So it's gonna make inference cheaper for all of us.
Yeah.
So it's driving the inference costs down, and it's also driving the costs down, not just through competitive dynamics, but through actual cost structures in the data centers. So as a result of that, two things. One is there's a better balance between lower cost inference and intelligence for us as consumers and businesses. And at the same time, it's a lower cost for the operators of those things. So it's not like somebody's got to be spending money ahead of the curve basically to try to gain market share. It's going to actually bring down their costs. Now, the other thing is that what there are people who have read the paper and know how to implement that and are already porting this approach, this clever approach to open source models.
Mm.
But you got to believe that Google has a patent on this. They don't have an issued patent. They have filed patents for this. And of
Mm.
course, that's secret for up to, I don't know, to 20 months or something under the USPTO. So we won't really see the emergence of the patent, but anybody who's in competition with Gemini
Mhm.
and their TPU backbone on the infrastructure side, any one of them, they can't just go out and say, okay, well, I'm going to just duplicate this and
Right.
catch up to them because the patent's coming down the line.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to, eventually pay royalties, license royalties to Google for this innovation, or try to invent something around it that skirts the. Imagine how successful and thorough Google's patent application
I'm
officers
sure.
are.
Yeah.
Like they're,
Yeah.
they're,
Somebody's getting paid well to work on that. Yeah.
and they didn't just release this paper thinking, okay, well, maybe somebody will, outthink us on this one. No, they've got this wrapped up. So big boost to Google in the long term for their TPUs, because now they'll build TPUs around this TurboQuant technology,
Mhm.
and that has import to NVIDIA. But NVIDIA is so big, by the way, and has such a treasure chest. They'll just say, okay, fine, we'll license that to Google
Yeah.
or from Google.
Whatever keeps it moving.
We'll pay you money. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to stay competitive.
Yeah, and then it'll work out for video, pay whatever that ungodly sum will be, and be fine. Yeah, they'll still profit off of that, right? Because it's such an improvement. Yeah, the thing I read when you did a great job talking about it, and we can move on. But the one thing that came out of me when I was reading about this article, because I didn't remember the name, but as you explained them, like I did read about that.
Yeah.
So the one thing that came out to me was like sort of this needle in a haystack. Its ability to find a needle in a haystack while also I don't know if the compressing isn't the right word for it, but reducing the size or whatever, or and as well as the latency, and the fact that it had, to your point, they're reporting zero, like not like 0.01 zero
Yeah.
problems, which is really phenomenal. We don't get a whole lot of zeros or 100s when it comes to AI. There's always some sort of like wiggle room in there that says like it's really good, but sometimes it also really, really goes off the rails, right? And that's like, you get used to that with the AI discussions. It's like it could be nuts, it also could be ingenious, and sometimes it's both at once. Like that's kind of what we deal with. And this is a standout story to me because that's not what it was saying. It was like, no, it just works. You don't
Right.
that's a different kind of story.
It's plug and play.
Yeah.
And by the way, Google is just immensely impressive in recent months with the approach that they're taking, and they're not in a rush because they have all the real goods behind the scenes, right? I'm just very impressed, and I own Google stock.
Mhm.
I'm not giving it up. It's gonna go. It's gonna keep going, right?
Yeah.
This is not a 10x thing for Google, but you just can't imagine Google suddenly being displaced, given how formidable their technology development and their
Yeah.
market space development is. So, I have spent quite a bit of time, as have you, Brian, recently, as millions of people around the world have, implementing a framework around Claude Code
Mhm.
on my system and focusing on that in order to really get proficient with it. But now I feel, again, I've known in the back of my mind, I need to go next over to Google and do the same kind of thing, set up my whole system
Yeah.
architecture, a duplicate basically of what Claude Code and Claude Cowork and all of those things are to get working together. I need to
Yeah.
do the same thing in the Google ecosystem.
Well, I'll tell you what I just did was, I was gonna bring this up later, but I'll just say it really quick. Like, um, I we had a team meeting yesterday, as we do, an internal meeting or whatever at Scaled, and there was talk of Claude Code, and RCA Jake was building in the terminal, and I was just pointing out, I was like, oh, but if you haven't touched Claude, I highly recommend not going to the terminal. There's really no there's reasons, but
Yeah.
not an intro level user reason. There's no reason, right?
Yeah, if you don't run multiple terminal sessions simultaneously, or you're running multiple projects at the same,
No
great, use
offense to my
terminal.
coworkers, that's not where they are,
Yeah.
And so that I was without trying to go over the CEO, I was like, yeah, you guys can get away. Like, start with Cowork, actually. Don't even start with Claude Code, start with Cowork. My point to it was get good at Cowork. That's exactly what our clients are going to be asking us for, right?
Yeah.
And you can retroactively go to Claude Code. So what do I always say I do? Like anytime a new model comes out or whatever, I build a skill to build more skills, or build a custom GPT
Yeah.
or a gem to build more gems. So what I did yesterday for the team is I said, well, look, the main thing they're going to want to do is build skills. But the only way the code work really is super valuable, or Codex, by the way, to me right now across a team is shareable skills, because you're talking about local files as it stands right now. Things could change. So, what are you going to be doing? Well, I build a skill. It's really helpful to me. I pass the file over to you. Andy, you open it up in your cowork or wherever you're working, code or otherwise, and you can instantly start that. So what I started doing is building these zip files that are fully self-contained and already had some skills that were built in them for scaled as examples. So I would just build a skill of an old custom GPT I had to do to write social media posts, right? You speak into it, you tell it all your ideas, it helps you conceptualize. It's not a replace you, it's just like lets you babble. And I always felt like that was the best way to actually get really good LinkedIn posts. I've been saying that for years now,
Yeah.
is just randomly babble about your idea and let AI clean it up, but don't have AI write it for you. You know what I mean? Like, don't have AI come up with the idea without you being involved. Anyway, so I built the skill and I just packaged that. Now the cool thing is that worked. I tested it in Cowork, and it comes up. It's like, hey, I'm Cowork. I'm really good at this stuff. All you have to say when you give it the zip file from a brand new instance is run these instructions or something like that. and it unzips the file, immediately starts reading the documents as we know it's going to. It has a skill builder in there that was customized for scaled. So it's using Anthropic's really good skill builder, but it was further optimized for scale just to be more likable, more easy to understand because it's using scaled examples. And then that's all zipped up. So now I just give that zip file. It's small. It's like 200 KB or something to my coworkers. And I go, you don't have to know anything. Just open up Claude Cowork, get started with that. Give it the zip file and say, run these instructions. So then what I did yesterday, and credit to Jeff, who's been talking about in our comments, who's been talking a lot about Codex. I think it's Jeff. I hope I'm right, Jeff. Talking about how much Codex is great. I gave the exact same zip file to Codex this morning, and I said, make me a Codex version of this. And it had zero problem doing that. So now I have a skill to build more skills for Codex and a skill to build more skills for Claude. And my real reason for jumping in here, Andy, is because I fully intend to do the same thing with Gemini, is help me build a skill that's going to get people going, get started with this. If you don't know what you're doing, give it this zip file and just off you go. And it teaches you along the way as you're building a skill, it's teaching you how to build a skill. So you come up with
I want to just point out that because skills are basically just a package in Markdown of instructions, they're portable across all these platforms. And so I've been singing the praise of Gemini today a little bit, and Claude Code for sure. But let's not forget that OpenAI's Codex is really important here, and they just turned Codex into a real work agent. And this is a shot across the bow to the others, including Claude Code and Cursor and the rest. So it has a plugin system that's just been released, connecting it to the actual tools that people work with: Slack, Figma, Notion, Gmail, Drive, and 90 others. No, not 90, but dozens of others out of the box. And this is the moment that Codex transitions from just a code writing tool that's used by developers into a general work agent like Claude Cowork, right? And I think I read that Google is coming. Is it Google? Google's coming out with a Mac desktop app for Gemini, and that's to counter the presence of ChatGPT's desktop app and Claude Code's desktop app.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
Google's
Codex.
doing
So
it.
I'm using
But
Codex.
remember, OpenAI and Codex are they're not giving short shrift to all these trends. They're delivering, they're shipping immediately. And
it appears that there's going to be a further focus there, right? The whole thing about not having the adult chat, getting rid of Sora. This is all part of this code red that we apparently heard about, is like focus on what's going to move the needle right now. And Codex has got to be central to that strategy. By the way, I had not really used Codex much, a little bit before today. It is incredibly similar to Code Cowork. It's a very similar situation. It's incredibly easy to use. It's very intelligent. So for anybody that already has OpenAI accounts, and Beth pointed this out yesterday, that there was not great news for Anthropic. They kind of were like, by the way, we're going to throttle you. Whereas before it was like, if you're on these off-peak hours, we'll give you double credits. But that's sort of like they were rolling back on that a little bit, which kind of miffed me a little bit yesterday. Well, Beth put something in our internal Slack, and she said, timing is everything, because OpenAI, I imagine, capitalized on that. And they're like, hey, you want to get started at Codex? Till April 2nd, you get 2 times the tokens. So they're not missing an opportunity. If Anthropic has a misstep about making people feel like, oh man, I mean, I'm on $100 plan, and I kind of took it personally. I'm like, wait, hold on. At what point am I immune to you saying you're going to throttle me for my work? I mean, that doesn't sit particularly well. Well, OpenAI swoops in and says, hey, you get double the points to use. Go find out Codex. Honestly, it will make me go play with Codex a little bit more over the next
yeah. So did you just mention? I was distracted by the chat for a moment. Did you just mention that Anthropic just announced a new methodology for throttling your use, and that actually compresses the time windows during which you get your credit limits applied, so that you have to stop work?
I don't know that it stopped work because truthfully at the $100 plan I haven't been had to stop work ever since I upgraded, which fair is fair. I would have to go look at the specifics to it. I know they shared it in our internal Slack, so maybe we can circle back to that. Jimmy had brought it up, or maybe Carl did, and then Beth was talking about it, and I was sort of reading their comments. So Beth, if you want to, I know Beth's in the comments. If you want to chime in, Beth, and give us some specifics, you certainly can. So maybe we'll wait for Beth to give us a little bit more on that one.
Yeah, but that's news. That Anthropic is getting some blowback because they haven't solved the demand problem that they have.
Yeah,
People grew tremendously over the last couple of months, but that puts an enormous strain on their inference infrastructure, and so they're having to throttle users. And so, yeah,
yeah.
I think we discussed it yesterday, but yeah, Beth, do you have the details on what's actually applicable? Let us
Poor
know
Beth.
in the chat.
All in caps. She's yelling at me now. I brought
She's
it up.
demanding attention to
Dude,
the
I'm
fact that
sorry.
you brought that up.
I remembered you, me. I'm sorry. It's not personal. So Beth brought it up in our internal Slack channel, and I am still asking Beth to answer the question in our messages here. If you can give us more details on that, Beth, that would be super helpful to it. But thank you, Beth. And what I was going to share before that is Jeff saying I use Codex constantly for $20 a month, and I've only had to buy additional credits twice in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
That is a statement right there. So if you haven't tried Codex, if you have used Claude Code, but you have a $20 plan, at least with OpenAI, I highly recommend you going and trying Codex. I think you're going to find it to be a very, very similar type experience. Jeff has been very vocal in saying he likes it more than Claude for several different reasons. So, perhaps you will as well. I mean, again, the point is, right, Andy, Claude Code and Cowork has gotten a lot of the news, rightfully so. But Google, OpenAI, and I'm sure others are all actively playing in this space, and they're certainly not going to let Claude Code or Cowork have all the limelight. You can be sure. Just what Google has put in AI Studio within the last week should show you that they're really serious about what they're building. So, okay, I do want to
move on to Tribe 2.
Yeah, well, okay, before I do that, because I will forget to say this. Okay, so I have some news, Andy, that I cannot reveal any sources on. In fact, I can't even tell you that it's verified news, but I do want to share it because it came up. And that's that we heard a story that there are multiple, it's not, I don't know what particular AI company, but there was a story about 8 different locations in the US where this AI companies are essentially hoarding hoarding books, ripping pages, scanning it, training, discarding the books. And I think that's number one, that's disturbing to think about that's how these models are continuing to go towards training. And not to say that I thought every book in the world had been exhausted or anything like that, but the idea that there would be, and again, I'll say unconfirmed because we heard this story and I just don't want to get anybody in trouble. But I wanted to share it because it is an interesting story that somebody was in the room. It wasn't like something like I heard of a heard of a heard. It was like, no. I was in the room and I saw this, right? And just a sort of an interesting story. I want to dig deeper into it. I want to see if there's anything out there on the web. I just haven't had a chance. But this idea of literally vacuuming or hoovering up these books and literally going page by page, whatever automated processor that is or otherwise, and discarding the books in order to train these models. I felt like we were past this, and it sounds, I don't know. And then again, I don't know what AI company this was or if there's multiple, but man, that doesn't sit well, that's like where we're at, right? That this is what we need to do. I thought we were sort of beyond this idea of, you know, taking books like that, or that there was a need to do that with like the way tech is right now as far as training. Cause it's like, we've sort of talked more about, well, is it continued training of the learning model, or should we be talking more about what you just talked about with coming out of Google and inference and reinforcement learning and all these other things. So I wanted to bring it up because it was brought up to us, and I just want to make sure I brought it out on the show. But I'll have to do a little bit more digging into it and see if there's anything else or any other news stories on it. But interesting to say the least on that. So just wanted to make sure I brought that up before I forgot. Really quick on another story here is from Meta, and Meta has an abstract. I have a paper out right now talking about, let me get the name of it here.
Tribe V2.
Thank you. Tribe V2. I was like, let me scroll back to where it was because this is what happens. Tribe V2. I'm reading this out of the rundown. An AI model trained on brain scans from 700 plus people that simulates neural activity across vision, hearing, and language, with its synthetic predictions actually outperforming real fMRI recordings. So it's actually the rundown does a good job of comparing this to what we've seen with like AlphaFold. And we've talked about that quite a bit with proteins modeling and mapping, and how what it allows people to do, or these scientists, is to work within virtual worlds, right? And use these models to look at how the brain scans and how they map and everything else. So this is V2, which means there was a V1. V1, when I read it, was only like 3 people and it was a very, very small test. Well, this V2 is now expanded quite a bit, 1,000 plus hours of brain data, 1,000 brain regions, 70,000 with from leaps from 1,000 brain regions, that was V1, to 70,000 with 700 plus subjects, up from just 4 volunteers in the original. Then it says Tribe V2's predictions match population level brain activity better than most real scans, which often get clouded by heartbeats, movement, and noise. And then the rundown goes on to say they replicated decades of neuroscience finding in software, correctly pinpointing brain regions for faces, speech, and text with 0 scans. So really, really.
Now let's see what the dark side to this is. So what does a company that it's just been, just been slammed in court for creating addictive processes for people and having I think a $3 million judgment for a single individual against them. That's Meta, right? What is a company that does this work around content on, addictive apps use a model? And why do they build a model that predicts what human brains' responses to content are? So what this does is they don't have to hook a human up to an fMRI to see where they get the most pleasure, responses out of something. They've modeled that, and now they can simulate that based on their content, and they can figure out. So I think you see where I'm going with this. It's like, why is Meta doing research in this space? Well, the only application I can think of is that they're wanting to refine their algorithms for content presentation in such a way that they optimize the pleasure that's created, the dopamine hits that come out of that process. Well, that's a little creepy, but hopefully Meta is, broad enough in their thinking around this that they're going to allow the work that they've done on Tribe V2 to be applied to, let's call it, more health-oriented applications than just content optimization for their platforms.
And again, it's open source. So this is now available and to demo to the right people, right? The scientists of the world who need it. I agree with you. Like, why is Meta spending money here? It's never just for, for the good of the world. There's always something behind it. They do have, obviously, Jesus, I already forgot the name of it, but the virtual reality and augmented reality glasses. I just can't. It was Oculus. I think that's right.
That was the original acquisition. That's right. But then Meta Quest is the name of the.
Yes, okay. Okay, think of what it's called. But those are up against the temples. Maybe there's some future idea about whatever that may be. As somebody who has been a lifelong but really only recognized what's going on, a sugar addict, which I don't really talk a lot about on the show. I talk about a lot of other stuff. I don't really talk about my sugar addiction, but it's a very, very real thing in my life. And it's something I struggle with immensely.
I've given up struggling with it. I just accept it,
I
and
mine is a I have very addictive qualities that once I started talking to people who were in AA, I went, "Oh, that's how that works in my brain." So I've noticed, and I wrote a book about it years ago and stuff like that. So the reason I bring that up is that, look, I'm not against finding research that figures out dopamine responses and helps me through glasses, through something else, helps me regulate what's going on. And so if there's some positives, that's not the dark web side, but maybe a positive to things like addiction, things like dopamine responses. And if there's something good that comes out of this, among many, many other things, that would be amazing, because we've seen what AlphaFold has already been able to do with protein research and stuff like that. And it's just honestly getting warmed up. I mean, that's like an engine that's just getting warmed up in the garage and it's already producing insane results. And so I look at things like this and I go, okay, it's open source. That's step one. Get it in the hands of the right people to do hopefully amazing research. So I hope that we're talking about Tribe V2 and V3 and V4 in the same way we talk about AlphaFold. And when, Jimmy is coming on Wednesdays and talking about these amazing science breakthroughs, AI and science that are because of a model like this.
yeah.
It makes me hopeful for sure.
Yeah, and this is really a step along the path toward modeling the entirety of the human deep neural network, which is the brain, in
Yeah.
all of its different facets, right? So we we could use this technology where they've used fMRI, functional MRI, which is a kind of a video MRI, right? That shows it while it's working. Use that and create models that can simulate the activities across all the neurons. And as you get higher and higher resolution for that, you can get down to the point where you're saying, okay, in this area of the amygdala, this little cluster of neurons is firing in response to this. And so we know that that's what's happening when they get this stimulus. And eventually you can build a mathematical model of a human brain that has, dare I say it, a kind of artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't do you want to take on, I know we said before the show, you and I were talking and, number one, we're to keep the show on the shorter side because Andy and I, we're the only ones here and we also have a lot going on today. But let's maybe wrap it up with 3.1 Flash because I liked what you were saying before the show. Like, maybe let's just give a quick intro to it, but then I would love to hear more about what you intend to build, which has sort of been a project of love that since I've known you for the last 3 years ish, that you've been sort of working on and maybe where 3.1 Flash can make a difference.
Yeah. So 3.1 Flash here, let me do, I was just looking at the announcement page for it, which is in the blog.google slash innovation and AI models and research. Oh, no, dogs, don't bark while I'm talking here. Can you hear that?
Yeah, we can, but it was well
Okay,
tuned.
well, hopefully it's not too interruptive. Okay, so today, literally today, Google is announcing Gemini's real-time dialogue capabilities with Gemini 3.1 Flash Live. Now, remember, Flash is the very small model based on a distillation of Gemini 3.1. And when they say Flash Live, they mean you can do real-time, high-quality audio and voice interaction with it, delivering speed and natural rhythm needed for next-gen voice-first AI. That will make it, this is immediately available in the API. So it's in the Gemini Live API in Google AI Studio. And by the way, we won't have time to talk about it right now, but AI Studio has now added a whole suite of automatic deployment capabilities using the incredible Firebase infrastructure that is accessible for not only authentication, but for Google Cloud management of your applications. This is also adding to this point I made earlier, which is I want to now set up an entire framework around Google to do application development. I'm still in the process of doing that, and trying to follow the lead that you, Brian, and Beth have created in your work with Google. I'm sorry, with Claude. Now I want to do the same thing with this, in part because I want to build voice first AI applications where you're just talking to the AI, and the AI is initiating conversations with you in order to elicit information from you that it uses to support a task that you have, the only source for which is not deep research on the web, but what you remember in your mind. And this goes back to a whole project that I've had all the way back to 2004, where I got venture capital money to build a company called OurStory.com, which was designed to try to create a timeline oriented collection of memories and events and media from your life that you could, in effect, create a legacy archive that was a representation of your entire life and do that collaboratively with other people. So now imagine an AI voice interaction agent that not only talks to you, but can talk to people that you offer it up to get to solicit a recollection of some interaction that the two of you have had together, and now you have both sides of their memory. Anyway, that's the idea. But Gemini 3.1 Flash Live would make it much more natural and dynamic and cheaper, right? Because one of the big costs for any with such application are the API costs when you're using an expensive model. Flash is a very inexpensive model, and so I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, me too. I've loved always hearing you talk about this idea, our story or variations of that, since I've known you, and I agree with you. Like, look, 11 Labs V2 Scribe is very good. So there are other models out here. I'd have to see how, Gemini's matches up against that, but I built that for clients and it's amazing, right? And then Gareth was saying how he's been building with Gemini Embeddings 2, which is their latest embedding model. And that can end up being a 1-2 powerful punch because you're getting hopefully superior ability to look through that vector database. This is taking in and having conversations with you, Andy, but that data has to go somewhere, right? So then, pairing that up with something like what we're seeing with embeddings 2, and then pairing that up with like just building it inside of Google AI Studio starts to become really enticing in terms of, by the way, you could do this in Claude or Codex, you're just connecting to the APIs. But it starts to become enticing as to like, well, hold on, what could we build here? I'm with you. I would love it if I was able to build something. I mean, there's always going to be a trust factor that I could easily distribute to family members on my dad's side of the family. My dad's brother just passed away a couple weeks ago. And, sad as that is, the other thing is that particular uncle of mine was a phenomenal storyteller. He was the guy when I was growing up that could just hold a whole dining room table, or those big families back in the day. It was like 2 dining room tables or a kitchen table attached to it, right, wherever the kids were sitting. And he would make me laugh uncontrollably as a kid. He just had a really funny way of telling a story, and I appreciate that. I consider myself like a storyteller. I like that. And so I think, oh well, among other things, with his passing, we also lost his stories, and so I would have loved an opportunity, several years ago when he was of the right mind to do so, where he could have just sat down and interacted with something that you build or whatever, and just share his stories in his own peace and comfort of his house without anybody else having to be involved. It's just like when he decided to do it, he had some downtime and I just thought of this funny story that, my uncle did. And okay, that's like my great uncle or something at that point, not anybody I would have ever known, or like, oh, he told these funny stories about when they came over from Sicily. I'm not getting those stories at this level, like that's several generations. So makes me very excited, and I hope you do build it so that I could just use it. It's really
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
it'll be
I will
available.
happily pay for what you build, Andy, and happily use it as well. Okay, what do you think? You have any other big news stories you want to wrap up this week with before we'll
Let me just end on one that I think is kind of interesting, which is
yeah.
Amazon acquired a robotics company called Fauna Robotics, adding the Sprout humanoid robot to its robot army. They already have lots of wheeled robots in their distribution network, but now they've added a humanoid robot. Now, Amazon, when you think about distribution of product, they're like the big gorilla. And if Optimus and or Figure or the others were hoping that Amazon would buy their robots, I think they can set that expectation aside now because Amazon's going to build their own humanoid robot assistants in their logistics platforms. And I think that the opportunity for other robots is going to be in other warehouses, not Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you, and they're making huge strides there. It always amazes me anytime like a video pops up on YouTube and it's like of some Amazon warehouse, and you're like, "What?" Like you just, it always seems like it's Jetsons' future to me. It's always like some CNBC story or something like that. And they're like, "Hey, check out this Amazon work, warehouse or something," and it's like it's it seems like it's straight out of the future. It's a interesting time to be alive. Okay. Last thing I'll say really quick is Gareth was saying he's been using Gemini 2.5 Flash to work with embeddings too. He said mostly for cost, but he doesn't really need more power for the model of what he's building. So yes, obviously, keep it.
Oh,
Uh,
I just have to say one other thing about that.
yeah, go for it.
So it turns out that you don't need the frontier models to do a lot of the tasks that are involved in all of these things that we're building. And there's news out that there's a very small 900 million parameter model that outperforms Gemini and the others in OCR, especially in the space of recognizing human handwriting. So if you just write and then you want the computer to read that, there's a 900 million parameter model that's beating on the benchmarks for OCR, all the frontier models. So this is just reinforcement of that's idea that don't use the frontier model for everything you want to do. There's certain task decomposition that you have to achieve where you then use selectively the models that are small and inexpensive and best at that particular task.
Yes. Well, I need to get Claude Code using that model then, because Claude Code annoyed me the other day when it said I gave it a bunch of PDFs. We got way down the pike, and then I was like, "Well, it's in the PDF." And then Claude Code came back to me and said something paraphrasing like, "Right, I forgot to tell you I couldn't read the PDFs. I should have mentioned that. I have no idea what's in PDFs." I was like, "Come on, these are 2024 problems, not 2026 problems." So yeah. Anyway, all right, that's it, guys. Listen, we're gonna wrap it up, but don't forget, subscribe. Like I was saying yesterday, we have lots of new people coming and hanging out with us. So please like and subscribe to bring more people to this. We're really growing in these last couple months. As I said, this is episode 690. That just means 2 weeks from today, that'll be episode 700. We'd like to point out as a little bit of a flex that we have not missed a Monday through Friday yet in all the time. In all those 700 shows, we have not missed a Monday through Friday, and we have no intention of doing so. And we do it because we love you guys. We love seeing you in the comments. We love seeing everything about it, and it's just fun for us. So keep coming back. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we'll release the Conundrum episode. That goes out on a podcast platforms, not YouTube anymore, because it's really not video related. So that'll be going out. Go check that out. They do really well every week. So I'm always surprised to see that they, even though it's two AI co-hosts on there, they perform pretty well on Spotify and the other platforms. And then, of course, on Sunday is our newsletter. That will be going out at 8 a.m. All you have to do to get subscribed to that is go to the Daily AI Show, and you can sign up for the newsletter right there. You won't get any of the fluff or any of the other stuff or spam or anything. You'll just get the newsletter on Sunday morning at 8 a.m. after I have originally put it together. And as we said, Andy is our chief editor. So after Andy has given it his seal of approval, then and only then will it go out the door for you fine folks to read. Okay, that's it.
I add M dashes. That's what I do to the point.
Andy puts them back in. That's actually perfect. Let's go with that, because if you see the M dashes, you're like, oh, that's Andy. Andy has been here. It'll be your calling card. I love that. Okay. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for everybody in the comments. You guys are awesome. See you later.